I was wrong. One of my favorite things about doing these videos and hearing from my community is that I actually like getting feedback, and it kind of keeps me in check when I have an opinion on a mode or gameplay or anything like that, to kind of get all aspects of you guys' opinions. And again, I take that into account. I've learned my lesson from years past. Shout out AP Gate. That being said, yesterday's Who Should You Choose, I talked a little bit about Wildcard and what it should have been. And I said in the video that the first goal wins wild card is good currently and good for what people want, but it highlighted a bigger issue in that wild card isn't anything special, and we like the first goal wins just so that we can get it over with. That's not entirely the case. Yes, it is true that a lot of players can just pull their goalie, things like that, and people can just get the one goal loss online, take their 500 points, and rush through the XP path. However, I didn't take into account, and something that I vouched, is that the right word? Something that I said I would always do is consider the casual player. That's something that I truly enjoy doing because you guys represent the largest part of the community. And something that I didn't realize is that the casual player likes the first goal wins because it's not as sweaty, it's quick, and it's fast-paced games, and you're on to the next one. It's not you're actually playing the game as they intend it, not just pulling your goalie and getting it over with. So I want to highlight that because there's a few comments in here about the wild card and that I was wrong in that opinion, and I completely agree. I think that there is a far better way to do wild card. Something that if you were to go back and check the tape on, I said that if wildcard wasn't going to be draft champs, like what I had stated in yesterday's video, where it's more competitive, then if it wasn't going to be like that, leave Hut Rush in, right? And fix Hut Rush. Hut Rush should have stayed in the game. And my opinion, how it should have stayed in the game is you simply, from my understanding, when Hut Rush came in, again, this is from an older developer that no longer is with the company, from my understanding, it was kind of pitched as a way to bridge the gap between EASHL players, so World of Shell players, and get them into Hut. Totally makes sense. It's kind of arcadey. It looks like sixes to an extent, and it's not nearly as serious as Rivals and things like that. However, the thing that always blew my mind, I remember playing it the second that I saw it in NHL 20 when they showed it to us early, was why can't we invite our friends? If the whole process was to bridge the gap between World of Shell players, Hut Rush would have been awesome if it would have allowed us to play World of Shell. I think, in my opinion, the way that you really evolve Hut is to allow rivals, even champs, any mode, allow us to bring our friends in. Whether it's they bring their own cards or we just join, they get the objectives done and things like that. But it all counts, and we can play, because World of Shell is, in my opinion, other than FIFA probably, and NBA to an extent, one of the best modes. Like, if you actually, for anyone that has not, obviously you follow my channel, you're probably more into Hut. If you have not played World of Shell, it is a very fun mode. Like, it is awesome to play hockey as one specific player. If this wasn't my career, I would play If you go back in like NHL 18, my second year of doing content creation, I found League Gaming, which is the best place to play competitive World of Shell, and I became obsessed with it. Problem is that it just doesn't really parlay into YouTube and content creation, unfortunately. That being said, it would be so much more fun in Hockey Ultimate Team. So let's say they don't want to put Rivals and bring World of Shell in. They could have just left Hut Rush in and then allowed you to play Hut Rush with all of your friends. And that would have been way better. They would have been like, if there's a week where it's like 3-on-3 arcade, you can play 3-on-3 arcade with your boys, and they get the objectives done and the rewards and all of that. Anyways, but when it came to Wildcard, I still feel that like it lacks identity. That's the thing. It lacks identity. But that being said, let's get into some of the questions and comments here, going over all of the things from yesterday's video. So, James Noble says, literally the best thing about Wildcard is the fast play factor. That's why they do it. For people who play for real and don't just cheese the system, it can literally be the most competitive, enjoyable online gameplay. 100% agree. I think that there is some, I don't know if it's because of just lack of player base. I noticed that I play a lot of sweaty players, and I'm also very high in Division 2, and I feel like I'm getting matched up with, not anyone, I'm getting matched up with, like, my skill, and skill-based matchmaking, this is a little bit of a side rant. Skill-based matchmaking is it's the food industry engineering food to make it more addicting. Okay? Over the years, if you go and look, food has become engineered by companies to make it more palatable so that you eat more. That's just how it is, right? Chips and everything like that, they've evolved into this thing where you just lay set a bed. You can't eat, bet you can't eat just once, right? Skill-based matchmaking in all video games in the gaming industry is that. Because humans get bored if you dominate or you get dominated in a video game or literally anything in life. So if it's too difficult, you get discouraged, don't feel like playing. If it's too easy, you give up and you're like, I don't want to do it anymore. So what skill-based matchmaking does is it gives you that 50-50. Guys, how many times have you played any mode in online games, could be Call of Duty, whatever, and you lose a couple games and you're mad? Like you're not straight up not having a good time and you're like, I'm not ending on this L. That is skill-based matchmaking getting its hooks into you. And I fall for it hook, line, and sinker, right? So Wildcard, if it was any matchmaking and you get the mix of you crush someone and then you don't, I think Wildcard would be a little more fun. But I can agree with that it is a more enjoyable gameplay experience for the most part, because if you match up with someone that's super sweaty, they're going to score a goal immediately, then you're on to the next one. And if you play rivals, you're defending the same 3 goals over and over again. So I can agree with you that it is a more enjoyable gameplay experience there. And the 1 goal win, I do think if there's no time limit, because BR in Battle Royale in MLB, so what I and myself wanted Draft Champs to be, it's 3-inning games, not 9-inning. Because in NHL, because they want you to play 10. The win streak is get to 10 wins before 2 losses, get massive rewards, right? And I kind of wanted them to just mimic that. In NHL, obviously you can't play a full 9-minute game, or 3-minute periods even, because that's a full game now. You're looking at 20 minutes per game. You got to make it a little bit quicker. That's why I said 2-minute periods, things like that. If they made it where the game just keeps going and its first goal wins, even if you're locked into like a 5 overtime 0-0 game, I think that's a way where you could just do it. But you'd get people farming just glitch goals and things like that. But I agree. I do agree. You've changed my stance on this. I was incorrect in that. Not all 99 cards are the same. For instance, I'm scratching the 99 Zucker due to his endurance. There are better cards than him now, so the card's total doesn't always matter all that much. It's like you said, speed first, then shooting, and for centers, face-offs. Also, with the terrible line changes and loss of stamina, endurance matters more than it ever has, in my opinion. I want the best card I can put in a particular position, whether that be forward or defense. This is what I was talking about with 99s and why I personally don't think that having a 99 overall card matters. It does in the sense of the endurance thing. And endurance is such a frustrating stat because for whatever reason, EA changed the goalpost on endurance, and it, in my opinion, is what is ruining year-long cards. So, I'll give you an example. Game comes out, and in a yearly game, there's no way unless they do a massive test beforehand, and Ultimate Team is the last thing to put its stuff in the game before it's shipped because it can, right? Like, think about all the devs, they have all this, they have to get it ready before the game ships, right? So it's like done in August. But Ultimate Team, they don't have to put the cards and content in the game until right before launch, literally an hour beforehand. So what happens is you get abilities that get put on cards, year-long cards, attributes and things like that. But they have, including content creators, like we probably have a better understanding of what we think the meta will be. But even us, we don't know if a certain ability is cracked. This year, I would have said make it snappy is 100% going into launch of the game, the must-needed ability in NHL. It's still a good ability. I'd take Schneip 10 out of 10 in NHL 25 over 24. That's just an example, okay? And what happens is game launches, and they have this, all the attributes are low because it's launch of the game, and endurance is at 85, okay? When they introduced the full pressure system, they had to stop scaling endurance because it ruined that aspect of the game. Whether you agree with the full pressure system or not, I actually think it's in somewhat of a decent place. The arcade aspect of it is awful. I hate the arcadey stuff that's in game. However, it mimics real life a little bit more than the alternative. Like, because prior to the full pressure system, you got no advantage for dominating your opponent and not scoring, like their goalie being insane. I do like the fact that if you control play and not just offensive zone rag, which they've eliminated, because remember when full pressure got added into the game, you could just hold onto the puck for forever and the full pressure system would add up. It requires you to take shots. It requires you to get the puck back in forecheck. I think it's in an okay spot. Like, I only see the full pressure system maybe once every other, or maybe once every 3 games. I think it's in an okay spot. I don't agree with the arcadiness of it, but I like the end result because it rewards you for playing better than your opponent. It does. But that being said, when that got added in, they had to stop endurance going up +1 every time an overall was increased, because the higher the endurance, it made the full pressure system not matter as much because their endurance was so high, they weren't losing endurance, which is fine. The problem is they keep going and they're like, oh man, we got to make these cards more enticing for everyone to go out and get. New event comes out in January. These cards have 92 endurance. For every of the year-long chase cards, they have 85. Like, this is what's plaguing all of the X Factor and power-up icon cards. Now, they could just go in and adjust them now, and I think it would be a huge thing. The problem is everyone avoided them because this is what the endurance. This is what I learned from AP Gate, okay? From the ability point gate in NHL 22. You can't make a change halfway through the year because all the people that have decided I'm not chasing after those cards because their endurance is ass, and then change it to 95, and now all the people that invested in X Factors, they all get the massive bump, but everyone else that decided to avoid them were like, yo, what? Totally agree. So, in my opinion, endurance just needs to be, like, in line with their speed, or I don't know. I honestly don't know. I would love your thoughts on that. But it needs to be in line with something and then stay there. And that throughout the whole year doesn't matter. And then maybe you could do an event early on in the year where the speed is low on the cards because, again, it's early in progression. And they get the thing I hate the most about content this year is that they had a lot of good ideas and they just weren't planned well, and the timing and placement of the events was just so incorrect. If the double shift event was at the first event after Fantasy, because Fantasy needs to be very early in the game, 99 endurance on cards that have 87 speed, so much value early on. Like, those are awesome cards. However, there's going to come a point where you got to make a decision in about a month where cards are way faster, but only have 90 endurance, and now you got to make, like, a decision. I just think, like, that's where the endurance would matter the most. I'm in complete agreement with you. I went on a long tangent there, but, like, I have 99 Palmieri, can't make my lineup. And that's crazy to me. And maybe they did that on purpose to stop the problem with Fantasy now. I can't believe I'm saying this. Fantasy is the best event in the game. Here's the problem. They have doubled down on Fantasy, something that I'm super happy they did. But I'm scared that they're going to triple down, and Fantasy cards are the only thing that matter. And why that's bad is because only the hardcore players get to get all the Fantasy cards, and now they dominate. The fact that Fantasy cards don't have high endurance is the trade-off to players that come in May, and they can go out and get master set player items that are better than the 99s. Now, Palmieri, Parayko, who is still my number one right-handed defenseman, like, all-time Mount Rushmore card. Ekholm, all those guys, there are some that are just the best all year, but if all of them were the best all year if you hit to 99, Palmieri was one of the best cards in the game in April. Like, the 99s were amazing in April, and they start losing their value, which I think is, like, good for the game. Not, like, I'm trying not to make everyone mad, and the hardcore players, dude, I swear the hardcore players are going to start hating me. I don't have any feedback to the players, okay? But I'm trying to protect the player base as a whole. That is my whole purpose as someone who gives their opinion to the devs, even when they want to listen or not. There has to be some sort of trade-off, because if the 99s, imagine you can't play during the 2-week stretch of Fantasy in October or whenever the game launches, right? Imagine you can't play. And someone gets, or a bunch of people get, like, 3 Fantasy cards, because next year, man, Everyone usually goes in on fantasy cards, but even the casuals are going to be like, dude, we have to get these cards. And I think that endurance on fantasy cards is an interesting thing. But I also don't love that they get ruined because of it. I just think the endurance thing as a whole needs to change. I agree with you usually. However, I think you missed your audience this time. Wildcard is great with first goal wins. I can tell who the better player is by the time the first goal is scored. If I match up with the same player again, I can try a different strategy. That's fun. Champs and rivals are where the elite players can L2 and glitch their goal their wins in 3 to 5 minute periods. As for people pulling their goalie, you can't prevent those looking to exploit the game for fast rewards. They'll get the rewards, and I get to move on to someone who wants to compete and have fun. Getting stuck playing 3 minute periods against someone that is way better than you keeps me from wanting to play. Wildcard adjustments have been great. We usually get current event cards to try. 12 levels for the premier rewards is great. They just need to add repeatable lame packs at level 13 plus, like at the end of the season pass. They should infinitely repeat also. Dude, thank you, Gord. Because this comment specifically is what completely changed my mind. I am a hardcore player, and my Twitch community, and you guys as a whole, for the most part, a lot of them are hardcore players. So it's hard for me to get out of the opinions of those players. I do it much better than I used to. I give myself credit for that. But I'm in 100% agreement here. Not everyone is pulling their goalie. And if someone wants to, you move on to the next one, and that's it. I completely agree here. I think selfishly, I wanted another mode that was somewhat competitive. And if they make Hut Champs better or Rivals more rewarding, I think we can get there. And Wildcard can be more fun for the casual player. And that's, I think, the frustration from a lot of the hardcore players is that Wildcard is just Hut Rush to an extent. It's dressed up differently and it works a little bit differently. It is just Hut Rush, but at least it works. You know, it does work, whereas Hut Rush didn't. Like, objectives didn't track and all of that, and they didn't want to spend dev resources to fix it. I said, if they don't want to put dev resources to fix it, then it's got to be removed. Right? I think that it shouldn't have been removed, and they could have made an ESHL version of it, but it like, if it wasn't going to be fixed, it needed to be removed. I'm with you here. I think I have been screaming for a shootout mode. Again, something that you can get done quick. Again, gives rewards. Wildcard with repeatable base packs at the end. You could farm them for sure. The problem is that I think people would just... You have to think of the worst in people, unfortunately, on the internet and video games. People are always going to go for the path of least resistance. If you put repeatable rewards at the end, everyone. Like, I mean, you're going to see a level of pull the goalie. Maybe allow it where you can't pull the goalie. Or if that's the case, it should be win-based. If it's win-based, then it's sweaty. Like, this is the balance, guys. I would love to hear your ideas on this, because I always play devil's advocate, because I try and think, like, what I know from speaking with the developers over the years and what's possible and what would be good for the player base. How do you fix the cheesing of just farming rewards? Because I think you're onto something here. Also, great comment. I completely agree. Changed my mind entirely. Jay says, I also like Wildcard, the first to score wins platform. It's a great form from the grind fest of rivals, especially when I'm on a losing streak. Go against a player that's abusing the backward skate and rag game mechanic. Doesn't matter, because as soon as he scores, he can move on to the next player, and you still make progressions towards the Wildcard rewards without penalty. Could it be expanded on? Yes, for sure. But Wildcard never gets under my skin like Rivals does. I played 3 matches of Rivals today, and all 3 opponents were abusing the back skate in the zone, and rag strategy, then trying to rap speed glitches. Played some Wildcard, didn't even notice it happening. Yeah, I'm in agreement, 100%. It is a safe place for the players. I remember back at the beginning of the year, I was watching some of my earlier videos. Something I like to do is look at my opinions at the beginning of the game and see how wrong or right I was. And one of them was, Wildcard is perfect for the players that play offline that have been, I don't want to say scared, but basically pushed away from ever trying online. Wildcard is the perfect place to try playing online, because a lot of players that are offline only, because they just assume they're going to get smoked, they would surprise themselves how good they actually are in comparison to the rest of the player base. And Wildcard is a great way to bridge that gap, because you don't lose anything for losing. Whereas in Rivals, you don't gain anything. It's not games played, it's wins. So I'm with you here. I always use big players regardless. My first line is the 99 Hut versus Hedman, McQueen, and Arnott, and no one can bump them off the puck. This is something that has always been a thing in game, and they've worked over the last 5 years trying to make it. Smaller players have never been more viable than this year. Is it in the best spot? No, but it is 100% more viable than it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, because of how progression worked, if you were under 6 foot in February, useless. Completely useless. For me, this has been a very interesting year. I never played an NHL game from launch until the next game is available. I basically start right around March timeframe, and then I quit before the next game is released. It's been quite amazing here in your perspective and input on the game this year. It's rare to find a content creator that looks at things from the gamer's perspective, but also has the general idea of the business side of things and takes that into consideration when having a conversation. I think that's what sets you apart from content creators, not just in NHL, but other video games I've played. As games progress, people tend to focus on the negative side of things, whereas you acknowledge some of the bad stuff, but also highlight the positive side of things. I think if I ever did stop playing NHL regularly, I would still watch your videos daily because the content is just awesome and engaging, so thank you for that. I appreciate that. And, fellas, the reason why I do this now is because I failed so hard. You can go on Reddit and search my name and look at AP Gate. We joke about this. It was probably the time that I was closest to getting canceled. Right, and it was a comedy of coincidence that if I were to do again, or if I would have just shown you guys a different way and handled it differently, I think I could have completely avoided it, because the way that it ended up in the general player base perspective was not how the whole thing unfolded. Even for anyone that doesn't know, basically NHL 22 X Factors became a thing. And again, like I mentioned earlier in this video, what happened was they didn't do enough testing, or they couldn't do enough testing on X Factor abilities when they introduced them, that some were so overpowered and they had a different cost. Shutdown was it. It was Shutdown was 2 ability points. Wheels was 10. And I think you had like 20 ability points at the start of the game. I can't remember. So what ended up happening was the first 3-4 months of the game, Shutdown for 2, obviously still one of the best abilities in the game. Everyone's entire decor was shut down. It was so unbalanced. I stand by this. It was so unbalanced. It made any card on defense that didn't have shutdown completely useless. And we got asked, as the design council, all of the Hut creators got asked, and World of Shell as well, hey, we are going to make these changes. What does everyone think? And the problem was, it came off as me and everyone else bang the drum being like, you have to make these changes, and they had already been doing it in the background, and EA came to us and asked for our opinion, and they had already made the scaling changes for the cost of XP, of ability points. And the reason and how they made those ability changes, guys, in terms of the cost, was they can see how many people have certain abilities activated. That's it. The reason why at the beginning of every year before this year, when they made every gold ability 2 and every silver ability 1, which I think is kind of pointless because it eliminates the usefulness of a lot of abilities. Anyways, what happened was at the beginning of the year, 23 and 24, what they did was, what is everyone's most used ability? Okay, that goes up in price. What is underused? That goes down in price. That was what they did. And that was a good way to do it, to an extent. But yeah, like I took the heat because what happened was Shutdown went way up in cost. Everyone that had built their team using Shutdown players was now screwed because they couldn't activate Shutdown on a lot of their players. And I was so wrapped up in the Gaming World Championship, and my entire focus was on, this is when I was the best I'd ever been as well. I was way high in Division 1. I'm very good in Hut Champs, far better than I am now. I'm older and awful at the game. But my whole focus was the 1%. And instead of coming out and complaining and going into a shell, I just took the heat, all of it. And some of it was unhinged, like just going after my wife and stuff. Like, dude, the internet is crazy. And I ask for the spotlight, so I will never shy away from it. Good and bad. You got to sit there and take your punches when you put yourself out there on the internet. I took it hard. I reflected, and now what you see, this comment is all because of APGate. I understand that 95% of the player base doesn't play the game the way the 1%ers do, the hardest hardcore players that have the loudest voice because they are the loudest player, they're most passionate. They represent the smallest portion of the community. So now I always think, hey, if a change is going to happen, how does that reflect the 90%? I don't forget about the 1% because they still matter. Like Hut Champs, in my opinion, Hut Champs should be all catered to the best players in the world. The fact that they dance around it and try to help out the casual player, the less skilled player, I don't agree with. Hut Champs is for the most hardcore, and it should always be that, and they don't do it well enough anymore. Anyways, that was a long rant, but it was fun. It was fun. Also, shout out my boy Thrash. He's a dad. Go give him some love. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.